Good morning, everybody. I am Maggie Coulter, president of the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association and a member of Save Sacramento Neighborhoods. I want to thank everybody for coming. We are a very diverse group that has come together on this nonpartisan issue. We have many very serious concerns about both SB 9 and SB 10, two one-size-fits-all proposals to end single-family zoning and neighborhoods in the entire state of California. SB 9 would preempt local zoning by allowing up to 8 units. Oh, geez. Sorry about that. That's the other one. Okay. Sorry about that. By allowing up to 8 units on what is now one single-family lot. No on-street parking would be required. Developers would not be required to provide pay for infrastructure improvements. Neighbors would not be notified, and there would be no public hearings on this 8-fold increase in density to existing neighborhoods. SB 10 would allow cities and counties to approve up to 14 units on what is now a single-family lot without environmental review and without notifying neighbors and without a public hearing. SB 10 also lets city councils undo voter-approved protection of open space, urban boundaries, and other land protections. This is a direct attack on our constitutional right to the initiative process. The diverse opposition to these bills comes from, among others, local governments, neighborhood organizations, housing advocates, racial justice advocates, environmental groups, and fair tax advocates. As does Sacramento's 2040 Draft General Plan, SB 9 and SB 10 propose radical changes to California communities and existing neighborhoods with the threat of much harm and the lack of documentation that they will benefit anybody but developers and investors. These bills would reduce homeownership opportunities, which is desired by people of all racial and economic groups. And they will eliminate the predominantly single-family neighborhoods that so many people want. California needs affordable housing, absolutely, but neither of these bills provide that. Increasing the quantity of market rate housing does not equate to affordability. Eliminating the choice of moderate density housing and the disruption to communities, neighborhoods, and families that SB 9 and SB 10 would cause is completely unnecessary. State law already allows up to 2 accessory dwelling units, also known as granny flats, on every residential lot. These are smaller and shown to be more affordable. The state also has hundreds of miles of underutilized commercial corridors where well-planned, well-thought-out multifamily housing with appropriate infrastructure can be built. We urge our Sacramento City Council members to remove UpZoning from the proposed 2040 General Plan, and we urge our Assembly members to heed the negative consequences of SB 9 and SB 10 and to vote no on both bills. I am very fortunate to have here today 2 other presidents of neighborhood associations. So I'm going to first introduce Jesse Reese with the Meadowview Neighborhood Association.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Reese, President, Meadowview Neighborhood Association, and I am opposed to SB 10. And the reason why I am is I feel like SB 10 is not conducive to the well-being of our neighborhood. When you speak of UpZoning, I think in terms of San Francisco area. If I wanted to live in San Francisco, I would move there. And there have been an old saying about New York. They call it the concrete jungle. And I think that's what would happen to our area if we had that SB 10 going through. What would we do about parking? what would we do about the canopy? I think most of y'all that might have seen Channel 31 last week when they exemplified the fact of the tree canopy in East Sac, the tree canopy in Land Park, as opposed to the tree canopy in the Meadowview area. And also they done an interview with the young lady that lived on Florin Road. She was concerned about the tree canopy. So with that being said, we feel like that would take away from the canopy in our area, and that is also conducive to childhood death, that conducive to smog and a lot of other illness and things that goes on in the areas. So therefore, I asked the assemblyman, asked our council people to also oppose SB 10. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jesse Reese. So now we have the president of the Mangan Park Neighborhood Association, Jennifer Holden.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Holden, and I am the president of the Mangan Park Neighborhood Association. As the usual response to that statement is, where is that? Or how do you spell that? I'll say it again, Mangan Park. That's M-A-N-G-A-N, Mangan Park, which is just south of Hollywood Park and just north of the Executive Airport in Sacramento. So who lives in Mangan Park? According to niche.com, our racial diversity is 36% white, 32% Hispanic, 23% Asian, and 7% African American. Our education level is about 8% master's degree or higher, 18% bachelor's degree, and 36% some college or associate's degree. So we are a lower middle class, blue collar neighborhood, and I like to call us the last affordable neighborhood on the west side of South Sacramento. Our property values are half of our surrounding neighborhoods. Our 1950s homes are small, around 1,100 to 1,200 square feet, mostly bungalows on quarter-acre lots. We are a quiet, ethnically diverse community living in modest, older homes, working towards the American dream. About a year or two ago, we started getting flyers and daily phone calls asking us if we had property we wanted to sell. They would buy as is. It would be simple and straightforward. Here are some of the flyers I received asking if I wanted to sell my property. Most of them are from Sunday and Open Door. The mailing address for Sunday is in El Segundo, California, and Open Door's mailing address is in Tempe, Arizona. One day, someone called me asking to buy property from me. The saleswoman knew my first and last name and my address. I asked who she was representing, and she said a group of private investors, but she would not give me the name of the group. After asking a couple of different ways, she finally added that the headquarters for the investment group is in LA, but there is a Sacramento office. I asked again for the name of the investment group, and she hung up on me. I have been told by some of my renting neighbors that their landlord is a corporation of some kind. In one case, the rental property is owned by a Chinese corporation. Roughly 40% of lower cost Mangan Park properties are currently rentals. And at their lower price, it is Mangan Park properties that will be ideal for a multifamily redevelopment from a real estate investor's point of view. That's 40% of my blue collar, ethnically diverse neighbors who may soon be displaced to locations further away from their work, their extended family, and their friends, as soon as the law under SB 9 and SB 10 say the bulldozers can arrive. Our politicians are lying to us when they say that SB 10 will create so much housing that the cost of housing must drop. That has never been true of our free market housing system. In our housing system, the highest bidder always wins. And my Mangan Park neighbors have no hope of ever being the highest bidder when there are real estate investment groups and multinational corporations also bidding. My neighbors are striving towards the American dream. A home of their own, clean water, good sewer systems, good schools, safety from violence, freedom of speech, the freedom to vote their conscience, and to have a political voice even if they are poor. Will SB 9 and SB 10 help my neighbors towards the American dream? No. Through densification, these bills will erode our political voice through undermining the voter initiative process, erode our political voice through our right to participate in local land use decisions, overwhelm our sewer systems, reduce our access to clean water, overcrowd our schools, and reduce access to an education to better ourselves, overcrowd our streets with cars, reducing emergency vehicle access, leaving cars more likely to be vandalized and stolen in the night, and creating daily friction between neighbors. And for all our neighbors renting, these bills will reduce their hopes of ever owning a home of their own. SB 9 and SB 10 will keep lower income, ethnically diverse neighborhoods from achieving the American dream. Sold as the pathway to social justice for ethnically diverse communities, the truth is that SB 9 and SB 10 will lower the quality of life for all Californians so that absentee investors and corporations can grow even wealthier while living somewhere else. Please oppose SB 9, SB 10, and the Sacramento 2040 General Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jennifer. So now we're going to hear from a few neighbors. So we've got Linda Gonzalez, who is from Elmhurst, will say a few words, and then we'll have Francesca.
Here in Sacramento, Mayor Steinberg and our City Council representatives are proposing changes to single-family housing at the local level, which is very similar to what is being proposed in Senate Bills 9 and 10 statewide. Our officials in Sacramento claim that these changes are necessary to address the housing needs in Sacramento, and they claim that these changes will make housing more affordable and more equitable. These are the same types of reasons that are being used by elected officials and people who support Senate Bills 9 and 10. Yet, they have not provided any data to support that any of that is true. In fact, the information we have obtained indicates that these changes will actually be harmful to our members of our community who want to buy homes and to ordinary people with modest incomes. This is so because these laws open the door to big money developers and investors who already have the money to buy homes, tear them down, and build multi-housing units for profit and rentals. The reality is that these changes will very likely drive the cost of housing up and serve as a way to keep ordinary people out of the market to buy a home. For example, the data we've obtained indicates that one of the largest home builders in the country is already planning and investing billions of dollars to invest in built-to-rent housing. Senate Bills 9 and 10 will therefore actually harm people, ordinary people who do not have the money to compete with institutionalized developers, real estate investors, or high-income earners to buy a home. Our communities will also be harmed because instead of encouraging and allowing home ownership, ordinary people will be forced to rental housing. Our elected officials are therefore very mistaken that these policies that are behind these laws will lead to more equitable and affordable housing. And another concern which is important to me as an attorney is that approving these laws is bypassing the detailed review and study that our elected officials are required to follow under CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, when new development is proposed. CEQA is very clear that our elected officials are required to study and evaluate any development and its impact to the environment, public services and infrastructure, including roads, water, power, and sewer. Passing these laws will allow our elected officials to totally disregard CEQA, a law intended to require them to assess any harmful effects to us and as members of our communities. And lastly, what is most concerning to me is that these proposed changes, the way that these proposed changes have been processed by our elected officials, they are being rushed almost by intention to avoid public input or awareness. This is shameful, especially here in Sacramento, because the proposed changes were developed without input from the people most affected by the proposed changes during the height of COVID restrictions and the shutdown, when everyone in California, the country, and all over the world were literally focused on life and death health issues caused by the pandemic. We want to send a message to our elected officials that they cannot take the easy route. It's time that they step up and perform their legal duty to study and evaluate the best approach to address our housing needs in California and Sacramento, with input from not only big money investors, but ordinary people who want to protect single-family housing to raise a family. We are asking our elected officials to vote no on Senate Bills 9 and 10, and in Sacramento, for them to vote against destroying single-family housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda Gonzalez. So now we have a representative of the Blessed Child Community Association, Roz Myers, to speak. I can hold that sign there. Thank you, Roz.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Roz Myers, and I'm the community organizer for Blessed Child Neighborhood Association. I'm coming out today to oppose SB 10 and SB 9 because let's make no mistake about it. We've seen this before. We've been here in our communities for over 30, 40, 50 years. We've been here for generations, 2 and 3 generations. And it's the same play. Developers, corporate developers and investors coming in to grab up the land, to change the character and the demographics of our community. When language is embedded in bills that will change the requirements that keep us safe from EPA, from CEQA, from our community planning proposals and developments, when there's language embedded in bills to exempt these laws that keep us safe, you know there's a problem. We currently have a brand new pre-K to 2nd grade school on Meadowview in our area where some of the plan proposals have been identified with no regard to the air quality of our young children, with no regard to the traffic that will go along that thoroughfare from our schools to our community centers that service our seniors and our children after school and after school programs. There's a problem. So I would like to urge our Assembly Member Cooper and our other representatives to vote no on SB 10 especially, and SB 9, because these 2 bills will negate the voice of the communities and the people that live within the communities, and will continue to erode our quality of life within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roz Myers. We have 2 more speakers. I would like to introduce Francesca Ritano, who is a tree advocate, and then we will have Scott Kaufman. Here you go.
Hi, my name is Francesca Ritano. I'm a member of the Urban Forest Master Plan Stakeholder Group for the City of Sacramento, as well as a Elmhurst Neighborhood Association neighbor. We will lose many mature trees under this proposal. 80% of the tree canopy in California cities is in front and backyards, in other words, in our neighborhoods. To view our yards and green spaces as a blank canvas and as underutilized land is wrong. A tree in a building cannot occupy the same space. Yet trees play an invaluable role in our environmental quality. They provide shade and cooling, especially necessary in a city like this. They trap air pollution. They sequester carbon. They filter the water so that it drains into our aquifers. On the other hand, loss of trees creates heat islands, which result in increased energy usage, increased air pollution, increased greenhouse gases, and eroded water quality. To think that increasing density, especially in our desirable neighborhoods, is going to somehow magically lower the cost of housing is just wrong. It's failed trickle-down thinking that hasn't worked in Vancouver, BC, it hasn't worked in New York, it hasn't worked in Chicago, it hasn't worked in San Francisco. Even Midtown's more expensive than my neighborhood, and that's the density here. So it's going to take political will, innovative ideas, and funding to solve our affordable housing crisis, not a big free-for-all for developers, investors, and land speculators. In addition, if these bills pass, what's going to happen is that under California law, a city cannot lower density. SB 330 provided for that, SB 8's nailing it in until 2030. So our neighborhoods will never be the same. So I'm urging Kevin McCarthy, my assembly member, I'm urging our legislators to vote no on SB 9 and SB 10, and our city council to reject the upzoning and the housing element in General Plan 2040. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So our final speaker is Scott Kaufman with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Thank you for coming, Scott.
Thank you. Again, for the record, it's Scott Kaufman, Kaufman. I'm the legislative director with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We are opposed to SB 9 and 10, SB 10 specifically for the effects it has on covenants, deed restrictions, HOA agreements. It would make those unenforceable and void them in areas deemed to be transit-rich and urban infill. We think that's a violation of the rights of people to form communities and enter into those sorts of agreements with each other. And the other issue we have is obviously on the taxation part. That's where we come in with property taxes. Anytime you're changing the use of land, you're changing the value of that land. And while Prop 13 is going to protect most people that are currently in their homes, there is situations where we worry that they could see increases to their property taxes because of these bills. And we also see issues where they could be denied relief in a down housing market. Under Prop 8, you are allowed to request a decline and value assessment from your local assessor's office if your property loses value. We saw this happen many times during the 2008 crash. Property values do go down, although it seems hard to believe in this hot housing market. And those people could very likely be denied relief through decline in value assessments, because while the value of the home has gone down in value, the value of the land now is worth significantly more as multifamily housing or condos, and that could be very, very difficult for people to deal with and make the payments on in a down economy. And so that's why we are opposed to SB 10 and SB 9 for those effects that they have potentially on the rights of homeowners to keep their homes and low taxation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. So that concludes our speakers. If folks would like to do individual interviews, you're welcome to do that. Again, I think all of these speakers who gave excellent presentations underscore the fact that these two bills, SB 9 and SB 10, are bad legislation and they need to be voted down. Thank you.
We will lose many of our mature trees under this proposal. 80% of the tree canopy in our California cities is in back and front yards, in other words, in our neighborhoods. To look at our green spaces and yards as a blank slate and as underutilized land is wrong. A tree in a building cannot occupy the same space. Trees are an important part of our environmental quality, but are often the last thing to be considered if they are considered at all. Trees provide cooling and shade, trap air pollution, sequester carbon, and filter our groundwater so it can drain to our aquifers. On the other hand, loss of trees creates heat islands, which end up in increased use of energy, increased air pollution, greenhouse gases, and impaired water quality. To think that increasing density, especially in desirable neighborhoods, will lower the cost of housing is just magical thinking. It has failed in cities such as Vancouver, San Francisco, New York, Chicago. The mantra in real estate is location, location, and location. It is going to take political will, innovative ideas, and funding to solve our affordable housing crisis, not a free-for-all for developers, investors, and land speculators. And if this fails, our cities cannot lower density under California law. Our neighborhoods will never be the same.
For generations, homeownership has been the American dream and a means to build wealth. If these bills pass, young Californians will be much less likely to own a home. Right now, the same folks who brought us the Great Recession, namely Wall Street and big investment firms, are buying up single-family homes all across America and converting them to rental properties. If SB 9 and 10 pass, which allow up to 10 units on a lot, 100% lot coverage with no on-site parking, California will be targeted by developers and investment firms to build market-rate apartments in our single-family neighborhoods. Moderate-priced neighborhoods will feel the most effect from this, with further gentrification and displacement of longtime residents. SB 9 and 10 encourage the development of a rental society, destroy the livability of our neighborhoods, all to allow developers to build wherever and whatever they want.
I'm here to speak on SB 10. My concerns about SB 10 and UpZoning is I feel like SB 10 is not conducive to the well-being of our neighborhood. When you look at the expanding of SB 10 and you think of the parking situations, and if I wanted to live in San Francisco, I would move there. It seemed like to me that is what they're striving to do, is to make SB 10 and Sacramento areas just like San Francisco area. You think in terms of the canopy. How would the canopy be? They say that Sacramento is a city of trees. I don't know how many individuals seen on Channel 31 last week when they exemplified the fact of East Sacramento having great canopy, and also in the other areas they have a great canopy, but in, say, the Menifee area, they also quoted that the canopies in that area is just unreal. And that is conducive to childhood death, that's conducive to smog and things of that nature. So my idea is hoping the legislators and our council people and everybody do not rule in favor of SB 10.
You know, multiple family homes, so duplexes and maybe quadplexes on where traditionally we would see single family homes, correct?
I'm going to try to rephrase that a little bit. It's a concern about the average middle class or lower class person being able to own their own home. Making certain that there are programs in place and that people who are not making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or millions of dollars a year, that these people have the opportunity to buy their own house. And I'm concerned that these bills are going to erode the opportunity for the average American to own.
The American dream.
Correct.
Right, that white picket fence, maybe not the picket fence in Sacramento, but at least the idea of being able to own your own home has always been looked at as kind of pivotal for the American dream, and essentially what I'm hearing is that this could potentially erode the neighborhoods away, the idea of a neighborhood.
I think it is the idea of a neighborhood that buys in and stays together for 30, 40 years. There's a wonderful story in Mangan Park. So the first houses were purchased around 1950, and around I believe it was 1952, two young couples who were friends bought into the same street of their brand new homes, and they actually are still living there today. kids, and one of them just turned 100 years old, and I was honored to attend her 100th birthday in the home that she purchased in the 1950s. And she and her friend, who's 97, sat and told me stories of what it was like to live their entire lives in Mangan Park as original homeowners. And the life she explained to me is very different than I think the life that the younger generations coming forward are going to be expecting. And that if one of the things that allowed them to live that kind of a life where they got to stay with their family, with their friends, their children and grandchildren have bonds. It was home ownership that allowed them to do that. And if we don't encourage and support home ownership, we are, in a way, encouraging relationships to be very transitional. You're only going to live there 2 or 3 years. Why would you invest in the neighborhood? If you don't own, what is the point of really taking care of one another and really taking care of the property? So I want to see programs that ensure home ownership by lower and middle class Californians for the entire state, not just for Mangan Park.
Some of the negatives with this, so this essentially allows granny flats, mother-in-laws, but you all kind of suggest that it's going to do a little bit more than that. Essentially more duplexes, more properties that are going to be used for rentals, correct? That's the fear?
Well, I wonder what the market forces are that would encourage home ownership under these bills. Who has the money to do the redevelopment, to take a single family lot and make it multifamily? I can tell you, my neighbors may be able to pull together a loan to put in an ADU in their backyard, but they do not have the wherewithal to take a single family lot, submit the applications, and pay for 4 or 6 units to be put on that lot. They don't. It's not my neighbors who are going to be doing that. Who has that kind of money? And why would they spend money to do that? Are they going to spend that money so that they can sell each one of those little houses for a one-time profit? Or are they going to go through that process and do that kind of building and that sort of investment in the property in order to create a long-term rental that they can draw an income from every single month? We have to be practical and think about how the housing market works. I talk to people all the time. We all have dreams. We all have ideas of the kind of city we want to live in, or ideas of what the city would look like. They're all different. But let's be honest with ourselves about market forces and why people would go to these lengths to redevelop these properties. What are they looking to get? If, in my understanding of how this world works, they would do that because they want permanent rentals. They will take what was a single family home that was owned by a middle class or lower middle class family, and they will doze it, and they will invest a lot of time and money in putting 4 to 6, and in some places SB 10 will allow 10 to 14 units on the same lot, going up stories, no on-site parking. Why would they invest in that property to do that? They are creating rentals. That's my understanding. If we can create a program where that doesn't happen, I think some of us would relax a little and go, okay, if these are for sale at a reasonable rate. Something else I want to emphasize about SB 9 and 10 is that there are absolutely no clauses to create affordable housing. No affordable housing minimums in any of this. When you don't have required minimum percentages of affordable housing, the units that go in are at market or above market rate. So this is not going to create more units that are going to be for lower middle class and lower class people. These are going to be most likely rental units that are going to go for I'm trying to remember what the average medium, that's eluding me right now. I don't want to say it on camera.
1,600, I think.
Right. I mean,
for a 2-bedroom, 1,600 or 1,800 probably in that neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what these units are going to be.
Which is equivalent probably to the mortgage that some of these people, well, probably a lot more than the mortgage that some people in your neighborhood, especially about 20 years ago, are paying. Mm-hmm. Obviously now it's $400,000 is a lot more expensive than for what you paid, but the idea is that at least it's available.
Correct.
And what you're kind of getting at is that the option of ownership may disappear.
for each lot as it undergoes this process, one by one. And these are by right. These bills make these redevelopments by right. That means that if a development goes in that the neighborhood thinks is an infringement upon the neighborhood or will diminish the property values of the other properties around it for whatever reason, the neighbors will have no legal redress. None. SB 9 and SB 10 have many clauses in them which are designed to override local control of land use decisions. No affordable housing overriding local control, so that neighborhoods will not be able to go to the city council and say, we want this plan changed, we want a different development, we want to see these things happen. That ability will be taken from us.